Before we begin, in 2019, YouTube was caught data mining children under the age of 13, violating the Child's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies meant to dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. This video is not made for kids. It is not targeted at kids. It is not advertising to kids. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is the Sentinel watching over geekdom, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Now that Doctor Who Series 12 is over, it's time to rank the episodes from my least favorite to my favorite. Before we begin, there is a couple of things to go over. First of all, everything presented is my own opinion. You might see something ranked you disagree with. That's fine. Your opinion is valid. If you do disagree with me, please start a conversation or a debate in the comments below. I love connecting with my fans and commenters. Second, if you followed my reviews of Series 12, you'll see that I gave every episode a rating out of 10. Those ratings had no play on this ranking. You know, when I gave those episodes a rating, it was based on their own merits. And now I'm comparing the episodes against each other. So one episode may be rated higher, but ranked lower, because when I compared them against each other, I enjoyed another episode more. And finally, two-parters, because we had two of them this season, count as one story. So instead of a top 10, there will only be 8 to rank. So without further ado, let's just jump right into this and get started. And starting us right off, number 8. The weakest episode of Series 12. Orphan 55. Now, the biggest thing, and when I heard everyone talk about this, I didn't agree initially, but thinking back on it, yeah, I can definitely agree. This needed to be more than one episode, because my big issue with this story is how rushed everything was. Like, getting the fam to the spa was very rushed. Having the dregs attack the spa was very rushed. And, you know, everything to get to the conflict and progress through it and get to the resolution, everything felt so rushed. There was no moment to let anything breathe. The dregs, at first I had no problem with the design, like I said in my review, it's not a very spectacular design, but I do have to give it credit where it's due. I do like that it is a practical effect. I like that it's a guy in a suit rather than CG, which so very well could have been, and there were even some CG shots of it, but for the most part, it was people in suits. The big twist that everyone went off on, that Orphan 55 was Earth, I have no problem with. You know, people were going off about the political message and how poorly it was handled. Of all the issues this episode has, I don't have any problem with it, because it was handled with all the subtlety of a political message in Doctor Who. But, yeah, no, just, this episode was so rushed, the side characters were not great, and like Arachnids in the UK, which, I'm going to be honest, this and Arachnids in the UK are my two least favorite Jodie episodes. This episode puts the Doctor in a situation where a mercy killing is involved. And it is butchered so badly. And, yeah, no, that's the one thing that's leaving any kind of sour taste in my mouth. Number 7. Praxeus. Now, I like the scope of this story, how you have it take place all over the world, like the Doctor is in, Malaysia, and then Ryan was in South America, and then you had Graham and Yaz in Hong Kong. I really like the scope of this story. I liked how epic it was in scale, and I liked most of the side characters, especially Warren Brown. I love Warren Brown. But that's pretty much it for me. I wasn't really engaged in this episode, you know. And it's just, this episode was written by Pete McTeague, who wrote Kerblam last season, and it's the same thing. I wasn't engaged by it. Which I'm thinking is really just a fault of McTeague's writing. I just don't think, nothing against him, I'm sure he's a great guy, but I just don't think I just don't like his writing. I'm not a particular fan of his style, and, just so much of it was just, I can't think of any other way to say it. That was my biggest problem with this story. I was not engaged. Number 6, what will probably be the longest part of this video. Ascension of the Cybermen, the Timeless Children. Now, thinking back on it, I don't have any major issues with Ascension of the Cybermen. I mean, I do have issues with it, but nothing that's thinking about it in hindsight really sticking out all that much. It's good. It's really good. It's part 1 of a New Who finale. Most of my issues with this two-parter as a whole are in the Timeless Children. And right off the bat, I do want to say, I still think this is better than Hellbent, The Wedding of River Song, and The Battle of Ranskar Collis, which in my opinion are the worst 3 finales in New Who. But yeah, the Timeless Children. Ugh. First of all, the big reveal of what the Timeless Child is and how it changes the history, I don't have an issue with. For one thing, it doesn't change the history of anything. Hartnell is still the first Doctor. His legacy is untouched by this. Especially given how many years we've had the Cartmel Master Plan, which Chibnall basically just said, yeah, it's canon. It's probably not canon how most people wanted it, but it's still canon now. But, first of all, the Timeless Children is in... But yeah, no, just... Oh, there's so many thoughts zipping through my head at the moment. But no, just... The reveal of the Timeless Child, I was mostly unfazed by it. And there were some things I liked, some things I was just mostly meh on. Like, the biggest thing I like is that Chibnall has made it so that, should the show go on long enough, which is very possible, or, should the show go on hiatus and come back, Chibnall has made it so that they don't need to keep coming up with ways to break the 12 regeneration cycle rule, like they did in Time of the Doctor. Although that is a funny take to watch that I've been seeing on social media. It's like, but if the Doctor could regenerate infinitely, that ruined Time of the Doctor. Honey, Time of the Doctor didn't need any help. Anyway, my 2 biggest problems with this is that, 1, we have 3 plot lines going on here. We have the stuff with the Cybermen, we have the Timeless Child plot, and then we have the 3rd act. And none of it gels together. There is no cohesion between these plot lines. It's very clunky. And 2, the Cybermen themselves. For me, the Cybermen were the most infuriating part of this episode. Just what, as the Master talked with Ashad, the lone Cyberman, he explained, oh, how you must have wanted to come to Gallifrey for centuries. How you must have wanted to set foot here forever. Why? Gallifreyans and Time Lords are not human. And furthermore, as Ashad explained, how the Cyberium, this sort of stand-in for a cyber planner, I'm assuming, created a death particle. A particle that would wipe out all organic life. And, until the Cybermen were the only race left in the universe. And before they used the death particle, the Cybermen would themselves remove their organic particles and be robots. This face is all I can say to that. And it's just, again, the whole, rather than wanting to survive, convert humans, and continue the cyber race, they want to wipe out everything until they're all that's left. Chibnall's depiction of the Cybermen were great until the Timeless Children, and it's just, Say it with me now, because this is my biggest problem. And it feels like this has been a thing in New Who for a while. Cybermen are not Daleks! Like I said, this is not the worst finale for me. Like, if I was to rank this would be passable with some of the other finales. It's not bad, it's not the worst, but it's not good. It does the job. It does the job. And if the Cyberman stuff was handled better, I think I might be a little more positive on this. Number 5, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. So, throughout this series, we had 6 episodes driven by the overall plot, 2 of which I've already covered, and then we had 4 that were just sort of standalone, more fluff episodes, so to speak. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror was one of them. And while it's not my favorite, I will say it is the most fun. I loved this episode. Just for, it was just like, let's not do anything big. Let's not do anything uber serious. Let's just have fun. And this episode, I think, succeeds in droves. The Skithra, the Rachnos but Scorpions, they were fine. The Queen, on the whole, they were really disappointing. Like, I wanted something like the Rachnos, which I understand why they didn't go that route, because watch the Runaway Bride. That thing could barely freaking move. But, outside of that, everything else was great. I loved Goran Vishnik as Nikola Tesla. And I would say probably out of all of them this series, he was my favorite guest star. And if I were to ever do a list of my favorite depictions of historical figures in Doctor Who, which I'm not, he would definitely make the top 10, if not the top 5. And I loved his chemistry with Jodie Whittaker. Again, this episode, just summed up, was just fun. Number 4, Spyfall. The series opener. This is probably, thinking about it, one of the most cohesive stories in the series. Like I mentioned in my Timeless Children review, and a little bit just in this ranking in the past, that when episodes drive off into various subplots, there isn't really much cohesion between them. And like I've said, that's been one of my big problems with the Whittaker era overall, that when an episode veers off into multiple plots, they don't really gel together. But in terms of that, Spyfall is one of the most cohesive stories of the Whittaker era. And again, there is a lot of fun to it, and the Master, this is, in my opinion, Sacha Dhawan's best story, because he, there's that just boiling rage that he tries to keep contained, but just doesn't. And that, whereas in the Timeless Children, he was good in that, but he was a little too John Simish for me, which, if you don't know me, if you didn't see my video ranking the Masters, John Sim is my least favorite Master. Thankfully, all the other incarnations who play that kind of Master, Alex McQueen, Michelle Gomez, and Sacha Dhawan, they all do it better than John Sim, but I'm just tired of seeing that Master, which is why I like Spyfall, because, not counting Jacoby, because, let's be honest, that was a cameo, Dhawan is really the first one to really veer away from that type of Master, and he and Jodie Whittaker are just electric together. I love their chemistry, their dynamic. It's a lot like Pertwee Delgado, The friendship is there, their history is there, but there is nothing between them in the present. Like, just the sheer animosity between them. It's so electrifying to watch. And I liked mostly everything else about this, too. The Kasavan were fine. But because most of the episode was focused on the Master, I feel like they weren't really developed. Lenny Henry was really good as a secondary antagonist, and I hope And I kind of hope, because he didn't get any kind of comeuppance, I hope that he kind of did survive, because I kind of want that plot hole closed. It's Doctor Who, so it won't be, but I'd like to see him come back in a recurring antagonist fashion. Granted, he's a modern-day human from Earth, so I don't know what they could do, but yeah. Again, just a really promising start to what I think was actually a really great series. Get into what I think are the cream of the crop. Number 3, The Haunting of Villa Diodati. Now, this episode is the one to introduce Ashad, the lone Cyberman, and he is really great until the Timeless Children. But no, like I said, thinking back on it, it feels like he's channeling David Banks vibes, like he's playing the cyber leader of the 80s, and I just love that. I love the partially converted design, mainly because it brings the human element back to the 2 robotic New Who Cybermen. And overall, what I really love about this episode is it's a horror-themed episode, but I love the atmosphere to it. Like I said, when it comes to my own tastes in horror, that atmosphere means everything. You know, like, that's why I think slasher movies fail, because they don't focus on atmosphere. They focus on, look at me, I'm a crazy guy with a knife, ain't I scary? And they don't focus on building tension, you know? They don't create a sense of unease. And that's why atmosphere is so important to horror. And that's what this episode really has in droves. And Lord Byron is also great. Mary Shelley's okay. I prefer Julie Cox still. But no, just what I love most is the atmosphere of this episode, you know. And just how it messes with everyone, the characters' minds. Like, they'll leave a room only to find themselves coming back into the room. And this continuing building tension. Like, I'm trying to recall the plot, and I don't really remember a bunch of it, but I remember the atmosphere. Number 2, Fugitive of the Judoon. Really, after Spyfall, the first major episode in the Timeless Child plotline. And a lot of people were saying we need to see where this plotline is going to see how we view this episode. And I loved this episode when it aired, and I still love it. Jo Martin was fantastic. I loved her doctor. I loved her design. I loved her interplay with Jodie Whittaker. This is one of, in my opinion, Jodie Whittaker's best performances. The Judoon were serviceable. Like, you know, someone pointed out they were just there to be fan service, which, yeah, I can understand. But at the same time, there was really no other way to do this, you know? They were, you know, because we were building up to this twist that Jo Martin was playing the Doctor, and she was on the run, or she was being hunted, or something. And so really, if you stop to think about it, the Time Lords wouldn't use the Judoon. They would do this themselves. And it's just, I think the Judoon were only there to keep the secret hidden until the twist reveal. Similarly, Jack. You know, Jack was only there to set up the lone Cyberman plotline, which a lot of people hated that's all he showed up. Although we have reason to believe, we're speculating he's going to be in the holiday special. So looking forward to that. Heck, even if he doesn't show up, I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, I just loved the tension in this episode, how everything built up. And just, I do think the payoff that Jo Martin was actually the Doctor was satisfying. And yeah, really, that's all I can really think of to say. There's just so much because my theory was wrong. I thought I thought Jo Martin, Ruth, was going to be the season 6B Doctor, but I'm fine that she's not, you know, and this episode is still a really enjoyable wild ride. And number 1, my favorite episode of Series 12. Episode 7, Can You Hear Me? First of all, finally we get something in New Who that we didn't get with the first 4 Doctors. We have a villain who takes the Doctor down a peg. We have a villain who is essentially an Eternal. We don't know exactly what Zelen is. He's not the Black Guardian, obviously. But, he is the same creed of villain as the Celestial Toymaker, the Eternals, the Black Guardian. And that's, I think, what New Who needed. A villain that so very outclasses the Doctor and says, "You're not a god. I'm a god." And furthermore, this episode was mostly great all around. Just its narrative on nightmares and mental health. And, the animation sequence explaining the origin of the 2 villains in this story was good. It was one of Mandip Gill's best performances. That backstory was just... I got choked up watching it. We saw a little bit of what makes Ryan and Graham tick, and really this episode, I feel, brought the TARDIS team closer. And the people complaining about it, Graham laughed, he smiled. The Doctor didn't brush him off. The comfort he was seeking, he very obviously got. And I'm so defensive of that, because I've been in the Doctor's position. I've been a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes, when you have a ball dropped on you, there isn't anything you can say. And in those moments, hollow platitudes, it's going to be okay. They're there. It's one of the worst things you can say. And I've found the Doctor in that moment so relatable. Like, I've related to Jodie Whittaker since Series 11. I loved her portrayal as an optimist, and just... I love this episode. I love everything about it. I love the cinematography. I love the performances. I love the villain. This, I think, as far as New Who goes, could be, and very rightfully should be, an all-time classic. And there you have it, my ranking for the episodes of Doctor Who Series 12. Please tell me, what were yours? How would you rank Series 12? Start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, click the bell in the corner next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload, because subscribe doesn't do that. In the description box below, you'll find the link to my Ko-fi, where you can help support me in the channel, and you'll find the link to my Twitter, where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is the Sentinel, watching over Geekdom, and I'll see you guys next time when the holiday special, Revolution of the Daleks, comes out.